The vaccines ride in, hoping to rescue a weary world from the pandemic. But it's more than this current crisis. Are we looking at the future of medicine? And how does the Detroit business world reconfigure to adapt to the adaptations we've all made that may not go away just because the virus does? Today is Sunday, December 13th, 2020, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint as we arrive at the 13th of December, which means, yes, we are less than 2 weeks from Christmas now, but it also means tomorrow is the 14th of December. The U.S. Code says that Electoral College electors shall meet and vote on the Monday after the second Wednesday in December following a presidential election. So tomorrow, electors will meet in each state and vote by paper ballot for president and vice president. That exercise has seldom had the attention it will have tomorrow. But today, we're going to put, again, our focus on the coronavirus. It is still piling up misery and pain all over the country. But we are finally getting close to being able to defend ourselves with something a little stronger than a mask and hand sanitizer. Now, we do have a wait before it gets everywhere it needs to go. But let's just take a moment and consider what's happening here. For starters, the vaccines have been researched, developed, and tested in rather lightning speed, extraordinary enough. But it's also the way these vaccines work that has me so fascinated. The old way was to create a vaccine that included a weakened or even dead piece of the virus. What's happening now is quite different. Due to messenger RNA, these vaccines give our cells instructions on how to protect themselves against the virus. Actually, the theory goes that the next time a virus comes along, we just change that instruction booklet a little bit, and boom, we have a new vaccine answer for that virus too. Feels very much like the future, and we're going to talk about that coming up. We're also going to talk about the future of Detroit. We have talked before about what the pandemic's long-term impact might be on, say, commercial real estate. It's just logical. If people can work from home, why would a business lay out all that money for office space? Surely they're learning to at least get along with a little less office space. But that's just one wrinkle we'll see in the post-COVID climate. What about the businesses that just couldn't make it? And if there is a light at the end of the tunnel, how do we help those that are still just barely standing long enough for them to make it? How does a resurgent Detroit get its surge back? It's today on Flashpoint. Well, it has been a mad dash scramble, and yet it has also been a studied, cool-headed study in solving a problem through science. The vaccines are coming, and in just about a year since the appearance of the coronavirus that we've come to know as COVID-19. Let's talk about where we are with Dr. Tina Chopra, professor of infectious diseases at Wayne State, also the corporate medical director of infection prevention and hospital epidemiology at the DMC. And Ryan Malash is an assistant research scientist at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. He studies herd immunity due to vaccination. So Ryan, let me start with you. I think there's still maybe everybody, I think, has the sense that this has all happened very, very quickly. But for most of us who aren't in the medical world, it's difficult to appreciate just how quickly this research has happened and this vaccine has been developed.
Yeah, that's a great question, Devin. And I think it has been remarkable how fast we've moved from the genetic sequence, which was identified, by Chinese scientists late last year, and then now to where we are today with vaccines being put in people's arms in the UK and soon to come to the US. I mean, I will say that it probably it seems like it was really fast, but we've been building coronavirus vaccines for a long time, since the original SARS outbreak. And so we've refined that process through the Middle East respiratory virus syndrome, which was another coronavirus that emerged in Saudi Arabia in 2012, I believe. So we've been working on this type of vaccine for a while. And it's just that we had to sort of substitute in the new pathogen to the existing framework. In
fact, Dr. Chopra, I think that's one of the miracles of what we're finding. The way that this vaccine works, where through messenger RNA, it inspires your immune system to find this virus and defeat it. From what I'm told, in future viruses, it will be simply a matter of plugging in sort of the new model of that virus into this system, and we should be able to address viruses in the future much more quickly because of this. Is that correct?
That's absolutely true. I think the mRNA technology is revolutionary. It's game changer, and one of the, we've leaped forward in 2020 with this advancing technology. And not only it's a game changer for vaccines, but I think it's also a game changer for other infections and cancer and things like that, because of the way the technology is. It's a genetic code that is entered in your body, and if you have a faulty or broken gene, we can fix it simply with the mRNA technology.
As compared, Dr. Chopra, then compared to other vaccines of the past where people might have been reluctant and worried about watching its efficacy move out, by virtue of what you're just talking about, since it becomes sort of an individualized medicine for everybody who takes it, should we feel safer about rolling it out than vaccines of the past, or is it still sort of a crapshoot when you start?
Absolutely. I think we should actually feel safer, because historically, if you see the vaccines that we've used, like measles and polio and influenza, they have used dead or weakened virus that basically imitates an infection and spurs the body to make antibodies against the virus, like measles, like I mentioned. But or you have used pneumovax or Gardasil, where vaccines use antigens or fragments of virus. But with the mRNA technology, you don't actually have the virus that you inject in. The beauty is that the technology is very temporary. Your cells won't keep cranking out the spike protein forever. It's just like you can compare it to an Instagram story. The mRNA fades away after a certain amount of time, which is great.
In fact, Ryan, I heard the other day they were doing some man-on-the-street interviews on WWJ radio, and a guy said he wasn't going to take this vaccine because he didn't want somebody shooting the virus into him. And I thought, ooh, we are not explaining this well yet, because that has been the way vaccines have worked in the past. You gave a either dead or weakened virus to someone. That's not how this one works, Ryan.
That's right. So this is not any part of the virus that's being administered, and I think we're developing new technologies, sort of in flu vaccines, which is my main area of expertise as well, where we give virus-like particles and things like that to people that are not actually pieces of the virus that have been weakened or killed. So I think it's important to note that. I think it's also important to note that the safety evaluations are ongoing in the studies that are being conducted now in the trials, and they'll continue in post-market studies. Once the vaccine is licensed, those things will continue, and we will sort of be able to see signals pretty quickly as people get vaccinated.
I'm really curious from both of you. Our learning curve on this was very steep early on. It was especially tough in places like Detroit, where we didn't have a whole lot of protocols in place yet early on. We lost so many lives as one of the first real hot spots in the country. I'm curious about, from both of you, what have we learned about this virus now over these last 8 or 9 months that it sure would have helped if we'd have known this much, much earlier? Ryan, let me start with you.
Yeah, so I think the couple things that I would note is sort of the speed which it transmits, especially in indoor settings where people are in close contact. Sort of the fact that it can transmit via respiratory droplets would have been sort of, I think, huge to understand a little bit earlier. And then also just the fact that asymptomatic people can transmit as effectively as they seem to be able to. That is something that I think we if we had understood a little bit better early on, we could have implemented mask wearing sort of early, rather than having this mixed messaging from World Health Organization or CDC about whether masks were effective or not.
Yeah, they kind of walked around like the best undercover agents, unfortunately. Dr. Chopra, what about you? What would you have liked to have seen us learn much, much earlier?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ryan. It's a very unforgiving virus. The fact that it causes a diffuse inflammation in the body, I think, and also a diffuse reaction, which is very similar to a localized lung disease that other viruses have caused. It's a novel virus, and we don't know, and we didn't know anything about it up until we had this huge pandemic. The modes of transmission of the virus, the asymptomatic carriage, and the fact that in different hosts it presents differently. In very young children, it can cause this multi-organ inflammatory syndrome, which is completely different from how it presents in adults. So all of these things, have taught us a lot.
Ryan, does this entire experience make you worry about the one that's coming next, or does it make you more positive that we might be able to deal with it better?
I think if we can learn some of the lessons about sort of how to, look at sort of the best practices or in countries that were able to control the virus, or in locations within the United States where we were able to control the virus and things like that. I think if we can learn from those lessons, it makes me hopeful, but a lot depends on what we're willing to, how honestly we're willing to look at the mistakes that we made.
That's a great question. It's an exciting time in medicine, and I think that's why applications to med schools, it was announced this past week, are up 18%. Thank you both for all of the work that you're doing on this front, and thanks for your time today. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Back with more. We'll talk about the business outlook in the city of Detroit in light of COVID right after this.
At Beaumont, we're always ready for change. So when COVID-19 changed the way our community needed us, we created change to serve them even better. Change that made safer return-to-work programs with on-site screenings possible. Change that let us pivot quickly and care for the most COVID-19 patients in all of Michigan. Because the one thing that will never change is our commitment to you.
Hi, I'm Kirk Mays, CEO of Forgotten Harvest. We help people every day who struggle with their most basic need, food, for themselves and their family. Forgotten Harvest is hard at work, providing assistance to food insecure families in Metro Detroit, particularly those facing hardship due to the COVID-19 crisis. My request to you is simple. We hope to have your support as we continue our work to help those with the most need in our community.
DTE's natural gas is a lot more than just an energy source. It perks up your mornings and eases you into relaxed evenings. It works both hard and smart. It can help heal the body and transport the mind. And at the end of the day, cleaner, safe, affordable natural gas is there to do more than just dry your clothes. It's a warm hug waiting to happen. DTE.
Welcome back. Many businesses and trend watchers are asking the same question. When we can, again, get everybody back to work in their offices or workshops or plants or restaurants or stores or studios, will we? Or has work basically changed forever? If it has, what does that mean for America's downtowns, which have been work hubs for ages? Let's peer into the not too distant future with Eric Larson, who leads the Downtown Detroit Partnership. Kevin Johnson is with us, the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, and Carolyn Casson, the president and CEO of Michigan Women Forward. Kevin, I want to start with you because you arrived, took the job, I believe, with the DEGC back in the spring, and I just think what an interesting time to take over a task like this in the middle of a pandemic. It's only gotten worse since you arrived, of course. And I'm really curious. Let me start with your reflections about where you think we are and where you think we're headed.
Well, I tell you, when I arrived here back in 2018, we were in a great space. We had all this energy, focus. We had a lot of great projects in the pipeline. They were being delivered. And the sun was certainly shining on Detroit when it came down to where we saw economic development opportunities being available to us in an abundant way. And so you juxtapose that energy toward a global pandemic and how that literally hollowed out the population base in the most dynamic downtown in the state of Michigan. And now what we're preparing for is this eventuality of the repopulation of our downtown, particularly the day traffic that we have come to rely on. And I think it will repopulate. It'll just be different. And no one can say how different it will be. We just know without a level of argument here that it will be different.
Eric, it's interesting. We have seen such a resurgence of people who want to work downtown. We've seen a lot of it, obviously, most famously, Quicken and all the folks there who have taken up so much of the inventory of office space, which looked great until maybe it isn't. What do you think about what happens to commercial real estate if people don't have to be working in an office?
Well, Devin, it's really interesting because, and thank you for having us. As Kevin said, the change in the downtown has been not only directly noticeable on individuals' lives, but also obviously the business environment that you're talking about. MDOT has projected we have 70% less vehicle traffic downtown and 30% less pedestrian. We know that about 25% of the work population, which had already grown to about 80,000 people in the core and about 160,000 in the greater downtown, is only 25% of that is coming to work on a daily basis. And so things have really changed. But to your point, going forward, I think there are two experiments taking place. One is this idea that businesses can reduce their footprint and potentially reduce some of their occupancy costs by having more people work remotely. Yep. But then the second side of that equation is people are recognizing that there is a real lack of not only collaboration, but innovation that takes place when you remove people from being together in a designated environment. And you can't replace the kind of sort of spontaneity and interaction that takes place when people are just interacting, whether it's in a downtown like we've been able to create over the last 15 years, starting in 2004 with Campus Martius, and then just building on that with everybody's good work. Right. You can't replace that at home.
Carolyn, where this leaves then a lot of independent business men and women. I think that's been one of the great stories of Detroit is that it isn't downtown is not populated by a ton of chains. Some people want to see more, but I think there's been a real opportunity here for a lot of sort of mom and pop, grab yourself by the bootstraps kind of startup. But we always talked about critical mass being a part of being able to build up to that. What do we do if that critical mass is no longer there for not only retail but restaurants too, which are, of course, already are on suicide watch, basically?
Well, as I know you've talked about and read about, this feels very much to many of us like a woman's recession. That we were hit the hardest. Somebody's got to be helping to educate those kids at home, and somebody's got to be taking care of our parents and grandparents, and women were really filling the void in downtown Detroit, right? These storefronts were being filled by women-owned businesses, and so it's really it's been devastating. It's for them. It's been devastating for those of us who have funded them and have invested in them, and we're really working hard to help them adapt to this new world order that we're finding ourselves in. The best thing about Detroit has always been our adaptability, our resilience, our willingness to innovate and be creative. Right. I'm very confident that we're going to be able to figure this out, but it's not going to be an easy fix. We're not going to wake up as soon as we've all been vaccinated and things will return to normal. There will be a new normal, and we're figuring it out every day as we go. Well,
and to this new normal, Kevin, we've always talked with Detroit's business development leaders over the last 5 to 10 years have been pretty busy on the phone with gauging interest from people who are really interested in what's going on in Detroit and what the possibilities might be here. Have all those phone calls gone away, or are they still happening just in a different way?
Devin, they haven't gone away, and I'm very proud to say that there are some fundamentals of business and opportunities that Detroit has and continues to have relative to our geographic advantage, relative to the workforce that we're able to assemble for a multitude of industry clusters. Those folks didn't just disappear; they're still here, and so, in order to access and have access to that, you got to give us a call so we can walk you through the process. So that hasn't abated. Has it slowed down? Absolutely, because everybody's trying to figure out what's next in that regard. But the fundamentals of what Detroit and what the energy that we had to attract and retain the businesses that we were working with, those dynamics are still in play. I will tell you that, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a company in our office. And I mean, in our office now, we were socially distanced and we had masks and we sanitized ourselves, and I dipped myself in some sanitizer before I showed up. But they were here from Italy. And we're interested in downtown, and what they did, they saw some things on their own social media channels about what was going on in downtown Detroit. They saw a couple of announcements, and they were very interested in coming and setting up operations here in the city of Detroit. So if they're in Italy and came here and wanted to see it, then that tells me that yes, there is some the sun is going to be rising on us in the very, very near future.
That is really hopeful. And Eric, the interesting thing here, though, we do know some very big things are moving apace, particularly what Ford, for example, is doing right now over at the old train depot and in Corktown, the footprint they're going to have there. I guess I'm more concerned, to Carolyn's point, with the little guys, the smaller folks who were just trying to fit themselves somewhere in between the crevices of these massive projects.
Yeah, and Devin, I think all of us are very concerned about, the smaller single shop. If you look at the stats nationwide, and it's only going to be, even increasingly troubling here in the urban centers. 1 out of every 5 small business, single location businesses are going to be out of business and won't reopen. Yeah. 7% of the work population is represented by that group that is being put out of business. And so, yeah, it's a big concern. But I think to Carolyn's point, we are an incredibly resilient. We've been here, here before. We didn't want to be back in this position, but we are incredibly resilient. We are amazingly entrepreneurial. The kinds of things that Kevin is pointing at in terms of our cost of living, the quality of life, and quite frankly, the work talent and pool that we have to draw on is a huge opportunity for us. I also think that post-bankruptcy, the city is in significantly better shape. We have great leadership at the local level. We have great leadership at the county level, and we have really strong leadership at the state level. And so I think we are in a better position than a lot of other municipalities and communities to rebound from this, which is going to be important. We've got to find really unique ways to support those that have been most severely hit, but we also have to really continue to build on things like the train station, which is $1 billion investment by Ford at the end of the day, and the Detroit Center for Innovation that U of M and the related company are doing is another perfect example of where we're going to be able to retool our economy and really start to attract some different types of economic investment.
And Carolyn, let me let you get the last word here. What would be the prescriptive? What can we do? What are the steps we can take right now to save those that are still standing who might teeter over if not for a little bit of help?
Go to our website, miwf.org, and see women-owned businesses. Where can I shop? Go spend your dollars in Detroit. You don't have to come downtown. You can do it from your living room, and make sure that you can click on minority-owned, women-owned businesses, and just continue to patronize those businesses and make sure that they know that you want them to succeed. Go pick up some takeout or have them deliver it to you. Make sure that these businesses continue to have a very strong customer base, so that the minute that we can open up shop, they'll be there.
Really good time.
And we're going to keep helping them too, Devin.
Yep.
We wrap our arms around these companies, these small businesses, and we help them every single day try to figure out, what's next.
Really good time, though, to invest in those things that you want to still be there when all is said and done. Carolyn, Kevin, Eric, thank you all so much for the time. Merry Christmas, and thanks for being with us today.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You bet.
Shop local.
Yeah, shop local. Back with more in just a minute. We got to shop right now on this break. Back with more in a second.
For more than 90 years, inspired by the example of St. Francis of Assisi, the Capuchin Soup Kitchen has been privileged to serve people facing challenging circumstances. Today, the Capuchin Soup Kitchen has evolved to include programs like the Rosa Parks Youth Program, helping our local children through art and tutoring. We can't do this work without your help.
Thank you for being a friend to the Capuchin Soup Kitchen. Michigan, it's time for double the fun because DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino are coming to the Great Lakes State. Sign up early and get $100 towards blackjack and $100 towards any sports bet for free. As the #1 sportsbook and casino apps in the country, we've paid up north of $20 billion in payouts already. Sign up now because this offer won't last. Just download the apps, sign up with the promo code, get your $200 bonus, and make it rain.
Our energy grid. It powers the present and fuels the future. That's why DTE is working every day, planning and creating the grid of tomorrow, one that's smarter and more reliable, with advanced technologies to make the grid more resilient and responsive. All so cleaner, affordable, reliable energy is where you need it, when you need it. DTE Energy.
We are all out of time. I'm so glad you were with us today. Tomorrow, of course, the Electoral College electors meet. Keep Local 4 News close at hand. Meet the Press coming up next. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Flashpoint.